All right, thank you guys. Nebraska takes on Purdue, and that's going to be a 12 p.m. Eastern kickoff at Ross-Ade Stadium. The Purdue Boilermakers are -2 at home, total 61. We're 5-0 in our last 5 daily best plays on patreon.com/BrockPage. And access to the daily best play costs just $1.99. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm going to explain a little bit more about it in just a few moments. We're also 4-1 in our last 5 extra daily picks on that site as well. And if you want to access today's extra daily pick, that's only going to cost you just $2.99. Now, we currently have over 775 members signed up and active on that site. And if you want to join those folks and get in on the action, link for that site is in the description section below. And once again, that's patreon.com/BrockPage. Now, this Purdue offense is throwing for over 300 yards a game. Wide receiver David Bell has 43 grabs for 493 yards and 7 scores. Purdue upset the Iowa Hawkeyes in their season opener, while also playing Northwestern and Minnesota to tough one-score contests. They're taking on a Nebraska team who's on a 2-game losing streak themselves, just 1-4 straight up overall for the season. The Cornhuskers are scoring just 16 points per contest on the road, and they're throwing for just 180 yards a game. Meanwhile, defensively, Nebraska is allowing 33 points per contest and over 205 yards a game on the ground. Now, total-wise, Nebraska's gone 3-0 to the under when they travel, 80% to the under for the entire season. Meanwhile, Purdue's currently 60% to the under for the season themselves. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward the Purdue Boilermakers -2 and the under 61 in that game. Before we go ahead and move on, just want to take another quick timeout and welcome you to the video. Got some lines and personal leans out for college football week 14. And of course, this is the Big Ten edition. Now, before we go ahead and dive into some more free picks right here on YouTube, some more free content here, just got to quickly remind you once again that we are 5-0 in our last 5 daily best plays on patreon.com/BrockPage. And if you want to access today's daily best play, it's only going to cost you just $1.99. We also went 4-1 in our last 5 extra daily picks on that site as well. And if you want to access today's extra daily pick, that's only going to cost you just $2.99. Now, you might be wondering, why would you sign up for picks on Patreon and pay for them where you can get them here for free right here on YouTube? And that's certainly a great thought, a great consideration. If I was in your position and I was watching, this guy give out free plays on YouTube, I'd probably be thinking the same thing. But you just got to hear me out real quick, because if you were to go out there and bet every single game that's on the board, side and total, like I do with my breakdowns here on YouTube, it's certainly not a winning formula for success. And as a matter of fact, it's a recipe for disaster. I strongly recommend that you don't bet every single game in the Big Ten this week, side and total. The books are way too smart. They're way too sharp with the numbers. The odds become massively more against you. And to be honest with you, the bookies have just so much more money than you and I do combined to be able to absorb that type of action. You are certainly no threat to them betting every single game. So what I do on Patreon is I make life a lot easier for you. I break it down and focus in on just 3 to 4 premium selections per day. They're my personal plays, games that I personally have action on. And I'll tell you this much, I'm having a lot more success betting on games that way versus wagering on every single game on the slate, side and total. Now, we currently have over 775 members signed up and active on that site. It's a really popular website. A lot of folks are on there. And if you want to join those folks and get in on the action, link for that website is in the description section below. And once again, that is patreon.com/BrockPage. And moving on, we are going to take a look at Ohio State squaring off against Michigan State. And that's going to be a 12 p.m. Eastern kickoff in East Lansing. Ohio State's -22.5, totals 59 and a hook. The Buckeyes are 4-0 straight up for the season. Now, they're in kind of a weird situation here. Unfortunately, they had several games canceled, obviously because of COVID, which could potentially be problematic in the college football playoff scene, because if they only play 4 to 5 games by the end of the year, they're not going to be able to get elected into the playoff. The committee is not going to do it. Now, the Buckeyes are scoring over 45 points per contest, and they're throwing for over 300 yards a game. Justin Fields is completing 80% of his passes this year, which is absurd, and he's thrown for over 1,200 yards and 13 touchdowns. Now, sophomore wideout Garrett Wilson has 31 grabs for 513 yards and 4 scores. He's averaging 128 yards a game receiving. Meanwhile, defensively on the other side of the ball, the Buckeyes are holding their opponents to just 100 yards a game on the ground. Linebacker Pete Werner leads the Buckeyes with 24 tackles, along with a sack and a forced fumble. Now, they're taking on a Michigan State team who lost 2 out of their last 3, despite upsetting Northwestern this past week. Sparty's lost 2 of 3 at home, and they're scoring just 18 points per contest. Now, the Spartans' leading rusher, Connor Hayward, is gaining just 35 yards a game on the ground and has yet to score. And as a matter of fact, the Michigan State Spartans have just 1 rushing touchdown through 5 ball games this season. Meanwhile, defensively on the other side of the ball, Michigan State is averaging less than 1.9 sacks per contest. Really weak pass rush right now. Sparty's giving up 31 points per contest and over 130 yards a game on the ground. Now, total-wise, 2 out of Michigan State's last 3 ball games got over the posted number. They're also 2-1 to the over at home. Meanwhile, the Buckeyes on the other side are 75% to the over for the season themselves. Give me the Ohio State Buckeyes minus 22.5 and the over 59 and a hook in that contest. All right, next matchup, not on our board. Wow, that is really surprising. It is going to be Penn State Rutgers, noontime Eastern kickoff in Piscataway, New Jersey. Now, the Nittany Lions are the 10-point favorite on the road. Totals 57.5. Penn State's just 1-5 straight up on the season, and they failed to cover the number in 5 out of those 6 ball games. Now, the Nittany Lions suffered outright losses to the likes of Nebraska and Maryland, and their leading rusher is quarterback Sean Clifford, who gets half the snaps, maybe a little bit over half the snaps, and he gains just 42 yards a game on the ground. Now, this combination of Sean Clifford and quarterback Will Levis, they've been sacked 21 times collectively. Meanwhile, Clifford has thrown 8 picks. Now, they're taking on a Rutgers program who scores 31 points a game, and they successfully covered the number in 3 out of their last 4. Now, Isaiah Pacheco is averaging nearly 5 yards a carry, and he's plunged it into the end zone twice. Meanwhile, wideout Bo Melton has 474 receiving yards and 5 scores himself. Now, defensively, the Scarlet Knights D has 11 takeaways, and they're led by linebacker Olakunle Fadukasi, who has 73 total tackles along with a pair of sacks and 2 fumble recoveries. Scarlet Knights are currently 4-2 against the spread thus far for the season. And when it comes to the total in this one, Rutgers' last 2 straight ball games got over the posted number. They're officially 5-1 to the over for the entire year. Meanwhile, Penn State saw 3 out of their last 5 get over the line, throwing out that Michigan game. I'm going to lean toward an underdog, keeping this one close. Give me the underdog, Rutgers Scarlet Knights plus 10, and the over 57.5 in that ball game. All right, next matchup. It is on our big screen behind me, and that is going to be Indiana versus Wisconsin. And that's going to be a 3:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff at Camp Randall. Wisconsin's the 13.5-point favorite at home. Totals 47 and a hook. This Wisconsin defense is giving up just 11 points a game, 67 yards a game on the ground. Linebacker Jack Sanborn leads this team in tackles, 20 of them through 3 games, along with a sack. Safety Eric Burrell also has 9 tackles on the season and a couple of PBUs. Meanwhile, offensively, the Badgers have scored 45 points or more in 2 out of their last 3. Tight end Jake Ferguson is averaging over 10 yards per reception, and he scored 4 touchdowns on the season. Wisconsin is gaining 220 yards a game on the ground. Now, they're taking on an Indiana squad who, unfortunately, will have to go to work without standout quarterback Michael Penix Jr. He had a great season. Unfortunately, he's done. Penix accounted for over 1,600 yards passing and 16 total touchdowns. Now, the bad news for Indiana is that not only will they have to go to work with their backup, they're only rushing for 73 yards a game on the ground on the road. So that's going to be really problematic. You're going to have to lean on that rushing attack, and really it's been non-existent. Now, Indy's lost their last 10 straight against the Badgers, and they failed to cover the number in 8 out of those 10 ball games. Now, total-wise, 2 out of the Hoosiers' last 3 contests stayed under the number, and that was with their starting quarterback. Meanwhile, Wisconsin, on the other side, saw their most recent outing with Northwestern fall 19 points below the total of 43 for that particular ball game themselves. I'm going to lean toward the Wisconsin Badgers minus 13.5 and the under 47.5 in that contest. All right, next matchup I have for you, that's going to be another one that unfortunately is not on our big screen behind me, but it is going to be, what are we doing here? Iowa squaring off against Illinois, 3:30 p.m. Eastern start time. Now, the Iowa Hawkeyes are the 13.5 point favorite with the total at 50.5. Iowa failed to cover the point spread against Nebraska this past week. The Cornhuskers were driving late in that one and actually had a chance to win it. Now, the Hawkeyes are throwing for less than $1.90 a game on the road. Quarterback Spencer Petras is completing just 56% of his passes this season. He's thrown 5 interceptions and just 4 TD passes. His leading receiver is actually sophomore tight end Sam Laporta, who's averaging just 33 yards a game receiving and has yet to score a receiving touchdown. And as good as Iowa's been defensively, they're giving up nearly 350 total yards per game when they travel. Now, they're taking on an Illinois program who's on a 2-game winning streak themselves, victories over Nebraska and Rutgers during that stretch. The Fighting Illini actually scored 64 total points combined in those 2 victories, so certainly some life out of this offensive unit for the Fighting Illini. Now, Illinois has also successfully covered the number in 3 out of their last 4. The Illini are rushing for nearly 225 yards a game, and they've scored 8 rushing touchdowns. Meanwhile, defensively, this Illini D has 13 total takeaways. Devin Witherspoon and Jake Hansen each have a pair of interceptions. And defensive lineman Owen Carney has 4.5 sacks on this season and a forced fumble. So certainly these Fighting Illini, they've been opportunistic on the defensive side. Now, total-wise, Illinois' most recent outing got over the posted number. Meanwhile, Iowa saw 2 out of their last 3 get over the line themselves, throwing out that Nebraska game. So I'm going to lean toward yet another underdog in this one. Give me the underdog Illinois Fighting Illini plus 13.5 and the over 50.5 in that ball game. And with that, we're going to dive into our next and final matchup for the show. It is going to be Maryland versus Michigan, 3:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff in the Big House. The Michigan Wolverines are the 5-point favorite at home. Totals 58.5. Now, the Wolverines lost to winless Penn State this past weekend by double digits. They're also 0-3 straight up at the Big House this year, 0-3 against the spread in those ball games. Michigan scoring just 17 points per contest at home. Joe Milton's completing just 56% of his passes. He's thrown 4 interceptions and just 4 touchdowns all season. Meanwhile, this Michigan D is giving up 35 points a game and over 240 yards a game rushing at home. The Michigan defense has only 3 takeaways through 6 ball games, and they also have not reached double-digit sacks yet for the season as well. So Michigan defensively really hurting this program right now. Now they're taking on a Maryland squad who won 2 out of their last 3 themselves, and that's going to include wins over Penn State and Minnesota. The Terrapins also successfully covered the point spread in 2 out of those 3 contests. The Terps are gaining nearly 400 yards of offense per contest. And of course, bruising running back Jake Funk is rushing for nearly 8 yards per carry and has a pair of scores on the ground. Meanwhile, sophomore quarterback Talia Tungavaloa has thrown for over 1,000 yards along with 7 touchdown passes. Now, total-wise, when it comes to the number in this one, Maryland's last 2 straight ball games both stayed under the posted number. They're officially 3-1 to the under for the entire season. Meanwhile, Michigan saw 2 out of their last 3 home games stay under the line themselves. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward yet another underdog covering the number. Give me the underdog Maryland Terrapins plus 5 and the under 58.5 in that contest. And with that, we're going to dive into our quick pick recap, once again brought to you by patreon.com/BrockPage. I'm going to lean toward Purdue -2, under 61. I like Ohio State -22.5, over 59 and a hook. I'm going to lean toward Rutgers +10, over 57.5. I also like Wisconsin -13.5, under 47 and a hook. I'm going to lean toward Illinois +13.5, over 50 and a hook. And last but certainly not least, I like the Maryland Terrapins +5 and the under 58.5. All right, and with that, we're going to dive into some shout-outs, once again brought to you by patreon.com/BrockPage. And from our Instagram platform, shout out to Big Sean Kemp, John Paulo Riccio, shout out to Clara Pabin, shout out to Teresa Lynn. Teresa Lynn gets a shout-out today. Also want to give a shout-out to Jared Bonner from Bonner Comedy, and he was actually a producer for a really big, popular sports handicapping documentary back in the day. So shout out to Jared Bonner. Also want to give a shout out to Sumika Honey, Brenna Mary, One Take Edits, Sports Sharks, and Kevin Hernandez. And then finally from our YouTube platform, shout out to Nathan Williams, Sean Mejias, Jeffrey Sung, Stephen Quintanilla, Awful Workplaces, Jonathan Perez, Brian Harding, Donald Jackson, Jarrett Brown, and last but certainly not least, got to give a shout out to my man, Gino Estep. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on Patreon. If you guys decide to get a package here today, just keep in mind, we'll bill you the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. But most importantly, guys, got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. Really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, happy Monday to you. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at patreon.com/BrockPage.